When Albuquerque Police Chief Mike Geyer left his job last month, there was a lot of reading of the tea leaves. Rumors swirled he was on the outs. Then a testy city council meeting questioning his authority drew a rebuke from the mayor's office, which apparently asked him to leave just a few days later. Meanwhile, just last week, the governor mysteriously fired her Secretary of Public Safety. The Line is getting into it this week. I'm joined by Line regular and attorney Laura Sanchez. And we also welcome Line guest, one of my favorites, Dave Mulryan. He's founder of Everybody Votes. And another favorite guest we always like to see is the owner of Vox Optima Public Relations. That would be Merritt Allen. Now, after getting elbowed out of the press conference announcing what Mayor Keller tried to spin as a well-timed retirement, Mr. Geyer's been making the media rounds, including a big interview with the Journal in which he blasted the mayor's office for micromanaging. And Merritt, the mayor's office says it's sour grapes. What's your initial takeaway from this whole back and forth we got going here?
My gut, and this comes from, I've spent my whole career working in government as both a member of the military and as a contractor. And you have executives who are either very much focused on their office and their legacy, or they're focused on the organization. And I think very much we have an executive who's focused on his office. And loyalty, I think, may be more important than results or operations. And I think we can see, certainly one of Geyer's complaints was that he was micromanaged. I think if we look at the types of press conferences, the way just communications were handled with the public, it was certainly micromanaged. And I think it would be fairly easy for a deputy chief who perhaps was not in agreement with his direct boss, the chief, could certainly make an end run to the mayor and say, hey, if you want somebody who's going to toe your line, I'm your guy. So that's how I see that maybe playing out.
Yeah. Laura, pick up on that. You know, the idea is always politics with everything, because again, these are appointed positions, not, elected positions, the chief. Should we have seen this coming in your view? And now it's easy to connect the dots now, but should we have, was it super obvious we all just missed it a little bit ago?
I don't know that we could have foreseen it, but I think anyone in that position, and that's true for the next person who comes in as permanent chief, or any others that may come in the foreseeable future. As long as we have a Justice Department decree here that we're being managed and looked at by the feds, that position is going to be under a microscope. And everything that position does, any administrative decisions are going to be scrutinized differently. And as with any job, I mean, I think we all know there's an important aspect of managing down. In other words, you manage your staff, but you got to manage up. You got to manage your managers. Right. And so if you know that a big priority for any executive, any mayor is going to be public safety, and that's an area that's particularly important. It's maybe an issue during the campaign, which I think it was in this case. You're going to have a certain amount of trust built up. And so I think that may indicate more of what was going on. I don't perceive that. And I don't know firsthand at all, but it didn't seem to me like Chief Geyer was particularly, focused on that aspect of it. And I think, good managers often focus on the work at hand, and they're looking, sort of down not down, but they're looking to manage their staff and not necessarily aware of kind of the bigger implications. And ultimately, those positions are appointed. So the executive can make a decision. And I think that it's going to be a tough position no matter who's there.
Dave, when you think about it, as I read it, I should probably start that. The mayor's office is spinning this really hard. I mean, really hard. There's all this list of grievances about the chief, was unavailable. He just wasn't, on the scene enough. He wasn't. I'm reading all this saying, I don't know, all sounds like fireable offenses, but a long time ago. Does it make sense what you're hearing from them?
Well, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that in some ways, when you look at it, like the federal crime statistics say that there's never been less crime in the country. We've done very well managing it. But I think that one of the problems that we have as the police department has, that the mayor's office has, is we are under-policed. I was actually talking to the chief once at an event, and he said if we had a similar amount of the percentage of population to police that they had in New York, which is considered, excuse me, the safest city in the country, we would have a police force that was three times larger than it is now. And so we have about 1,000 police. That would mean we would have 3,000 police. And for whatever reason, even though federal crime statistics say crime is down, yet people feel unsafe. So we clearly have a perception problem. And it's interesting. The mayor is fighting with the police chief and firing him. Yet the average American, the average Albuquerque citizen is saying, I feel like I call the police and I've had a break-in and they don't show up. And so, whatever the problem is between the chief and the police and the next chief, they're putting out a nationwide search. They need to really say to the constituents, look, we understand the crime problem. We are going to fix it. We're going to do these things. Mm-hmm. Winston Churchill was famous for saying during World War II, never waste an opportunity, never waste a crisis. It's an opportunity. Rahm Emanuel sort of did that in 2008. He adapted the saying. Right. And I think that we clearly have a crisis. I mean, we are on fire with COVID and everything else. Maybe use that opportunity to really have a change of heart and a change of policy at how we look at policing in Albuquerque. And even, clearly the governor is getting involved by being unhappy with her public safety director. So now may be the time to sort of throw out the book and do something new.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Public Safety Secretary Merritt, Mr. Shea, Mark Shea, has been let go. He is the 8th person at that level to either leave the administration from one reason or another. We don't have much explanation, however, from the governor about what happened there. Have you heard anything? I got nothing. Like what's going on there?
No, like you, I've got nothing, and that's certainly an indicator, and that's something that's been a trend for the last 20 years. Some of this comes with the Executive Powers Act. Some of this comes just as a trend in government communications, which is have press conferences, do not answer questions, right. And also the role of the public information officer or the public affairs officer has dwindled to nothing. Mm-hmm. There used to be the principles of information, fair and free flow of information. Mm-hmm. And the way I was trained is you respond to a media query within 24 hours, or preferably by their deadline. You find out what their deadline is, and if it's same day, you respond by their deadline so they have time to file their story. Mm-hmm. And if the response is, I can't respond, you give them an answer why, like the matter is still under investigation, we don't want to prejudice the investigation. What has become the norm and what we accept, and by we, I don't mean just the media, but we as citizens accept is we allow our elected officials to say nothing and to stonewall the media and to be silent. And I think we really need to stop that. Yeah. We've got, because people are pressuring the mayor more, and he's a slightly different character than the governor. He is trying to spin it. I don't know that he's being particularly successful. The governor seems to feel, as her predecessors, both Martinez and Richardson, seem to feel comfortable in their power. I don't think we'll find out what has happened with the Secretary of Public Services, much as we have not found out about the other cabinet members. That's
true. But Laura, does the governor not have some responsibility to talk about this? I mean, she has the right to change her cabinet secretaries. No one's arguing that. But shouldn't there be a bit more than this for the public?
Well, I think that this administration has been focused quite a lot on the COVID pandemic and a response to that. Mm-hmm. I think that in the case of the health secretary, anything related to health right now would have been extremely important to make sure there was more information provided. And I think we were told that the pandemic was taking its toll on the secretary, and she wanted to move on. And oftentimes when people don't comment at all, it could be something that's personal in nature. It could be there's any number of reasons why somebody could have been dismissed. It isn't necessarily just that the governor or whoever the executive is has a reason, but the person may have potentially done something wrong. And so in a personnel matter, you don't want to discuss those things, especially if there's any potential for a lawsuit down the road. So it's always a sticky situation because you don't want to get into private details and open yourself up to a potential lawsuit. I mean, we wouldn't want to see That's
That's
money
true.
spent on litigation unnecessarily. So, it is a little unusual. I think that so many cabinet secretaries have been have left. I would expect that it's for a variety of reasons, but it's also a really tough year. So people make personal decisions based on where they are at that particular time, and we're seeing this pandemic and the economic circumstances. It's not like people in state government get paid a lot. So they may also be moving on to try to find something that's more in line with what they need to do for their families. So, I mean, I think they're saying what they can right now. I'm not
Right.
sure that they're able to say anything more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, Dave, the one clue we do have from the governor is she says she wants more of a focus on community policing, civil rights. There's a new commission, of course. My sense is she's trying to stitch all these things together to make a, you can't do one thing and not have this other end of it not, cooperating. Right. Is that good enough?
I think it's good enough, but in some ways, too, I think we have to give the governor some credit. The governor was elected a couple of years ago. The world was completely different than how it is now. She kind of told us right out of the chute when she got rid of the education secretary, she is going to be an activist governor. And if something's not working, she's not going to say, oh, let's see if it works out. She's going to make changes. And I think that's actually good. Franklin Roosevelt was very clear. He tried something. If it didn't work, he got rid of it. He tried something else. I think we are in a world, and the state has done pretty well in controlling the COVID epidemic. And I think she's just not willing to sort of maintain the status quo. She is willing to take the hit. She maybe is a little bit too silent on all of these things. Yet, I think if she's moving around her cabinet secretaries, they serve at the pleasure of the governor. And it is her prerogative. And I think that she is really pushing. She wants results. She comes from the Washington culture where they try to get things done assumably. I think it's good. I think she should put all the cabinet is on notice. If you don't do your job, if you don't communicate with me, you're toast. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I wouldn't want to be one of them. It's a little nerve-wracking, but but also I think the governor tries to communicate directly with us via Twitter. She's a very strong presence on Twitter. I might suggest that she listen a little bit more to the communications professionals like Merritt made the point, because, there is a way to communicate it. I don't know that it's always just spin. I think the mayor also should have better professionals around him, because eventually everything comes out. We will get some notice, or else if you don't put out the story, there's a story that comes along that people begin to believe. So you may as well just take the hit in the beginning, say, I did it for this reason, because even if people don't agree with you, at least they know what you're thinking.
Good point there. We'll have to leave it. Well, I'm sorry. We'll have to leave it there. More to come on both these jobs, which are often a lucrative capstone to policing careers, no doubt. After the break, we're talking DACA and the DREAM Act with law professor Michael Olivas.